On page 4 of our Shabbat handouts. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time. Contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. We continue on the first page of our Shabbat pamphlet with our candle lighting blessing. I'd like to ask Linda Blassingame to please lead us.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah so v'tzivanu l'hadliknei shel Shabbat. Blessed art you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvah, commanding us to kindle the lights of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu shel Shabbat.
This week, as the weather often switched between dark, cold, and wet one day and sunny and pretty the next, I remind myself that we do not know what each day will bring. Whether we find ourselves on a sunny afternoon walk or making our way through a frightening storm, we know that life is unpredictable and that we can learn a lot from the weather that we experience. A bit later, we'll talk about how God appeared to Moses in our Torah portion, Yitro, this week, but it was amidst intense displays of weather, thunder claps and lightning flashes, thick clouds with Mount Sinai enveloped in smoke and fire as God descended the mountain, shaking violently. This parsha reminds us that God appeared to the Israelite people through the literal manifestations of the weather, whether through storm, lightning, or earthquake. So too, we know that God also appears through rainbows and sunshine. I take this as a reminder that no matter what the weather holds, whether it's beautiful or less so, we can find holiness in simply talking about and experiencing the weather, that which surrounds us each and every day and every moment of those days. It is a small, seemingly trivial step toward a life infused with gratitude and godliness. Shabbat Shalom. I'm so honored to be here again in Mobile, Alabama. I feel like I'm here, even though I'm a few miles away. I'm also very honored to be here leading with these phenomenal musicians, musicians who know that music is much more than melodious sounds. It's about raising our souls, elevating ourselves through prayer and through finding meaning with this community I thank them for teaching me that, and I thank you all for having me on another Shabbat. We join together, we continue in prayer on page 7 with Yedid Nefesh. We continue greeting the Sabbath bride on this beautiful Shabbat evening. I hear it's a bit rainy there. It's beautiful here, and so we'll join somewhere in between and say that it's a beautiful evening. We greet the Sabbath bride with the words of Lecha Dodi. It can be found on pages 7 and 8 of your Shabbat booklets. We'll be doing verses 1 to 5, and we'll rise for verse 9, and we'll greet the Sabbath bride from whichever door, whichever entrance you most feel God's presence on this evening.
לקראת קלה, פני שבת נגאלה. לך תודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נגאלה. לך תודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נגאלה. לך תודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נגאלה.
We continue in song with the words of our psalm for Shabbat, the only psalm that contains the word Shabbat, Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. Even though it's not in your Shabbat pamphlets, it is in Mishkan Tefillah on page 140. Otherwise, you should recognize the tune. We join together as we continue to welcome Shabbat.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולצמא לשמך עליון, ולצמא לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולצמא לשמך עליון, ולצמא לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונך בלילות, עלי הסוד ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולצמא לשמך עליון, ולצמא לשמך עליון. כי שימחתני אדוני בעבוד לך, במעשה ידיך ארנן. מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולצמא לשמך עליון, ולצמא לשמך עליון, ולצמא לשמך עליון.
On page 11, the words of Chetzi Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעל מה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתשמם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה, ואמרו amen. Please rise, whether in mind, body, or spirit, as we commence our call to prayer on page 12.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך,
We continue on page 13. This is an hour of change. Within it, we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it, we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv, aravim. We continue with our second blessing right before we recite the words of Shema, a blessing for God's revelation, for God's love on the Shabbat.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת.
On page 15, we continue with the Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Jack, if you can lead us on page 17 with the V'ahavta, please.
Hafta et Adonai Elohechem, b'kol lavavecha, uv'kol nafshika, uv'kol meodecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'elek asher anoki mitzavkam hayom al levecha, v'shinantan levanecha b'dibarta bam, v'shiftika v'atekka, uv'leftika uv'recha, uv'shabka uv'kumeka, Ukshartam leot al yodeko, v'hayi v'totafot beinaneko, uktavtam al mezuzot beiteka, uvishmerecha. Laman tiskaru vasitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kadoshim. Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. Asher hotzeti etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim Liyot Lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall love, we can see this all together, can we?
Sure.
You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus shall ye remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai, your God. Adonai Elohim Emet.
Thank you. On page 18, Anne, if you can lead us with those words.
Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
No way to get from here to there except by marching together and joining hands. We join together our Song of the Sea on page 19. page 20, grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us your Sukkot Shalom, your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore.
Baruch atah, atah Adonai, haborei Sukkot Shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah Adonai, haborei Sukkot Shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael.
We continue on page 22. We're already well into the book of Exodus in our weekly Torah readings. These words, Vishamru, also come from that same book. We continue together in song as we welcome the Sabbath.
Veshameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorot ha'berit olam. Beni uven bnei Yisrael, oti le'olam le'olam. Kishishit yamin asa Adonai et hashamim haaretz uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash.
Anochi Adonai Elohecha, I am the Lord your God. This is the very first commandment of the renowned Decalogue, the 10 Commandments. We read these words for the first time in this week's Torah portion, Yitro. It is fascinating that I am the Lord your God is the commandment listed before all others. After all, it represents the commandment to which most Jews have the hardest time connecting. And first of all, it's a declaration, not a commandment at all, but we'll leave that for another discussion. I hear so often in conversation, people say to me, perhaps because I'm a rabbi, perhaps because it's just kind of on their minds, that they say that I am Jewish, but God is not a part of my life. Or they say I am culturally Jewish, but not religious, or some derivative of that. I'm sure many of you can relate to those feelings or have heard them in the past. For one reason or another, people say it sheepishly, with some embarrassment, as if a rabbi has never heard that before, or as if it would somehow offend me. I tell them that it's fine, that taking God out of the equation can be a perfectly authentic way to express one's Judaism. And yet, after reading this week's Parsha, based upon a single verse, I would like to invite everyone to try and imagine God in a new way. As Moses prepares the Israelites for his ascent to Mount Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments, God reminds Moses how God released the Israelites from years of bondage in Egypt. God says to Moses, "Atem reitem asher asiti lemitzrayim." You have seen what I have done to the Egyptians. V'asa etchem al kanfei nesharim v'avi etchem elai. How I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now then, if you obey me faithfully and keep my covenant, you shall be my segula, my treasured possession among all the peoples. I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. This is the verse that I find so striking. There's something incredibly powerful about the image of an eagle carrying its child on its wings. And even if in this picture it wasn't exactly its child on its wings, you all get the point I'm trying to convey. And as I read the ancient text, I realize that this is precisely the kind of relationship that I want to have with God. The commentator Rashi shares with us that the Torah uses this metaphor because all other birds place their young between their feet, since they are afraid that other birds may fly over them and harm their child. But the eagle fears no one. Since no bird can fly above it, the eagle places its young upon its wings as it glides through the sky. I want God to carry me like an eagle carrying a child on its wings, showing me the world and protecting me as much as God can. The famous Torah scholar Aviva Zorenberg writes, "The effect of the image is, of course, to convey intimacy, protection, love, and speed, but also, I suggest, the enormous power of the adult eagle effortlessly carrying its young through the air. In other words, it engenders in people a sense of their own lightness. In a world that feels so heavy right now, I want my relationship with God to leave me with a sense of lightness. In a world buckling from the burdens that surround us, I yearn for a sukkot shalom, a shelter of peace, the feeling that God is carrying my burdens and that I can effortlessly fly on God's wings. In a word, the feeling of this day, Shabbat, of freedom, of lightness. So many of us, dare I say, the Jewish people have a complicated relationship with God, and it's understandable. Or some of us do not even know what a relationship with God can look or feel like. I present to you this option tonight, perhaps as a guide as you craft your own relationship with the divine. As I look at the image of the baby eagle on its parents' wings, not only do I think about the power of this metaphor as it relates to God, but also as it relates to relationships. After all, one of the other most famous metaphors for our relationship with God is that of parent and child. God tries to establish boundaries with us to keep us soaring, to let us grow, but also to set limits. Like most parents, my wife, Samantha, and I try to establish boundaries with our son, Rafael. I am admittedly on the stricter side, while Sam is significantly less strict when it comes to establishing these boundaries. Like an eagle, how do we find that perfect balance when it comes to raising children? For those of us without children, how do we manage any significant relationship in our lives? Protecting our loved ones, yet helping them grow, setting them free to be their authentic selves. There is an iconic Israeli song, one that is sung in the streets of Israel for decades now, on the army bases and in the taxi cabs at Jewish summer camps across this country. And it was one that I often played and sang for Rafael when he was an infant. The song is called Uf Gazal, which translates to fly fledgling. The song by Arik Einstein, one of Israel's most famous artists, tells about that empty nest feeling that we may feel when we transition from one life stage to the next. The first two lines of the chorus were carved on Einstein's grave when he passed away 8 years ago. I believe that this song captures my sentiment so perfectly. In life, we need to find that balance of holding on tight to what we need to hold on to and releasing what needs to be set free. As God does, so do we. I share this song with you now, and I say, Shabbat Shalom.
הגוזלים שלי עזבו את הקן, פרסו כנפיים ועפו, ואני ציפור זקנה נשארתי בקן, מקווה מאוד שהכל יהיה בסדר. תמיד ידעתי שיבוא היום שבו צריך להיפרד, אבל עכשיו זה ככה בא לי פתאום, אז מה הפלא שאני קצת דואג? גוף גוזל חתוך את השמיים, טוס לאן שבא לך, רק אל תשכח, יש נשר בשמיים, גור לך. עכשיו נשארנו לבדנו בקן, אבל אנחנו ביחד. חבקי אותי חזק, תגידי לי כן, אל תדאגי, ביחד כיף להזדקן. עוף גוזל חתוך את השמיים, טוס לאן שבא לך, רק אל תשכח, יש נשר בשמיים, גור לך. אני יודע שככה זה בטבע, וגם אני עזבתי, כן, אבל עכשיו כשבא הרגע אז מחניק קצת בגרון, מחניק קצת בגרון.
We continue with words of tefillah on page 23. If you're able to, in mind, body, or spirit, I ask that you please rise now.
Adonai, sefatai tiftach, ufi agita hiladecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Vayitrat Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah, Ra lehoshia. Mekakei chayim bekesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Tzomef novlim berofei kolim, Umatir asurim, Umachayim emunato l'shei afar. Mi hamoch be'al givorot, ומדום אלך, מלך ממית ומחיי, ומצמיח ושוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה חדוש ושמתה חדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We continue in silent prayer. We'll join together for the words of Shalom Rav in just a few moments.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha טסים לעולם. שלום רב ישראל עמך, טסים לעולם, טסים לעולם, טסים לעולם.
We turn to page 34. Please be seated if you're still standing. We turn to page 34 for a prayer for healing, Mishaberach, whether of the mind, body, or spirit. We pray that the wholeness and the peace of this day, Shabbat, lend healing, whether of mind, body, or spirit, to those in need. We join together with the first verse, and we'll have time for some names in between. Our prayers for healing include Elaine Berman, Mark Carroll, Jerry Woody Dobbins, Eli Cromers, Yetta Lee, Robin Mayer, Murray Muchnick. If there are other names to add, please feel free to unmute yourself or to share those names in the chat box now.
Sheila Schreiner,
Eddie Bradley,
Ann Blaze,
Girl Stalwart,
Mark Siegel,
Larry Crawley,
I'd like to ask Mel Sternberg to share some special words of prayer, a blessing on this Shabbat. Mel?
have to unmute first. The great pianist Vladimir Horowitz was once asked by an ardent admirer, "How do you handle the notes as well as you do?" The artist answered, "The notes I handle no better than many pianists, but the pause between the notes, oh, that's where the art resides." In great living, as in great music, the art may be in the pauses. Surely one of the enduring contributions that Judaism has made to the art of living is Shabbat, the pause between the notes. And it is to Shabbat that we must look if we are to restore to our lives the sense of serenity of sacred living.
Thank you. We continue enjoying that pause between the notes. We'll join together for words of Aleinu on page 35. Again, whether in body or spirit, please rise.
עלינו לשבח לדון החול, לתת גדולה
Please be seated. On page 40 of our pamphlet, we have one of my favorite poems, one that I know I've shared with you many times. Speaking it, now we're going to hear a musical version, Yesh Kochavim She'oram Magi'a Artza, a poem that can give us all comfort as we think about those who are no longer with us.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we love. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember. Yesh kokafim she'oram magi'a artza. רק אשר עם עצמן עבדו ואינם. יש כאן נשים שזיו זכרם מאיר, כאשר עם עצמן אינם עוד בתוכנו. אורות אלה המאירים בקשקת הליל, הם שמרים לאדם את הדרך. הם שמרים לאדם את הדרך.
At this time in our service, we share these names that we are commemorating for their yard sites. We think of Rebecca Etheridge, Sarah Etheridge, Julian Lewis, Willis Darby. If there are any other names to add, I ask that you please unmute yourself and share those now before we join together for the words of Mourner's Kaddish on page 43.
Eloise Davis Wheeler,
Betty J. Moore.
Marvin Treef. If it's your custom, I ask that you please rise. Otherwise, feel free to remain in your seats. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי תכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה לשמי דקודשה בריחו. לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
In just a moment, I'll ask Nate to lead us in Kiddush, and I'll also ask for a volunteer to please get ready to lead us in Motzi if you have a challah near you. But first, I'd like to ask the synagogue's president, Gil Layden, to lead us in sharing some announcements, please.
Thank you, Rabbi. We're grateful to have your presence tonight and your words and your spirit, and we appreciate you establishing and helping us with the Atlanta to Mobile connection. Today, it's also another Mobile to Atlanta connection would have been the 87th birthday of Henry Aaron, who was recently passed away, the great Hall of Famer that we all appreciated so much. So we have some exciting things going on. This coming Monday night will be the Adult Ed program of Eric Mendelsohn, synagogue architect with the vision. Michael Palmer, who is a photographer, has produced a book on Mr. Mendelsohn, who is an esteemed architect who built 4 synagogues between the years of 1946 and 1953. And Mr. Palmer is going to be presenting about Mr. Mendelsohn. We encourage you to attend. It'll be this Monday night at 5:30 via Zoom, and you can find more information in the kind notes about signing in. On February the 14th, Valentine's Day at 4 o'clock at the virtual cooking class, Bina Gowasser is going to be teaching us on how to bake hamantaschen for Purim, and everybody's invited. And if you're interested, you can contact Cassie Morgenstern. Her email address is in the kind notes as well. And of course, we're excited about the film festival coming back again for the 2 decades we've had of it. And that's going to be occurring between March the 5th and March 26th. And there's information about ticket prices and how to do it and so forth. If you would look in your kind notes. Religious school will be this coming Sunday. And then the next Torah study with Rabbi John Kaplan, it's going to be on Wednesday, February the 24th at 5:30. And finally, next Friday night, Seth Cherniak will be leading us with services. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Thanks, Gil. Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to ask Nate to lead us in Kiddush on page 44, followed by Ben leading us with Hamotzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsha b'ahava v'ratzon inkilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reshit. Ki hu yom tehila l'mikra et kodesh, zecher l'tziyah Mitzrayim. Kiranu voharta, yotanu kidashta, mikol ha'amin, v'shabbat kashecha, v'yahava v'ratzon, imchatanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh Shabbat.
L'chaim.
Amen.
And Ben for words of Hamotzi.
All right, you ready? Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our prayer is joyfully sung. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. B'te'avon Shabbat Shalom.
Look at
B'te'avon Shabbat Shalom.
That's my M's.
Nice. That is one of the most adorable things I've ever seen or heard. Can you please just ship one of those over to Atlanta?
Yeah, we got a few.
I see. That's why I asked. Yeah. Okay, let's join together for a closing song. The same song that we sang at the beginning. For those of you who didn't catch the words, there are only 3 words in Hebrew. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. May we build a world of Chesed, a world of loving kindness. Olam Chesed Yibaneh.
Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, dai, dai, dadadai, dai. 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 I will build this world from love. Yadadai, dai, dai, dadadai, dai. Now you must build this world from love. Yadadai, dai, dai, dadadai, dai. And if we build this world from love, yadadai, dai, dai, dadadai, dai, then God will build this world from love. Yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai.
Thank you so much, Molly and Christopher. Thank you, Andy, for helping us make this all possible and integrate this. Shabbat Shalom.